to this edition of The Final Whistle on Lair Media. And you can, info@lairmedia.tv is our usual email. And thank you for all the listeners and all the viewers and all the comments. They're very welcome and they're all positive. I hasten to add, I sound like a politician, but they are. And we have Chris. Good evening, Chris Price.
Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening, Martin Morris, and welcome.
Good evening, Pat.
And the rest of our panel, apologies, they're taken up with boxing. I don't know. Anna, Joe, Derwin, I don't know. They're all chasing a ball of a different size tonight. I don't know what they're doing, but we wish them well, and they'll be back with us next week. But I suppose we must start off with soccer and with the Premiership cross channel, and obviously the big result of the weekend was Man City and Spurs. Actually, I was up down in Mallow minding my dad, and I happened to see a lot of soccer because that's what he watches, and boxing. That's what we were watching. That was my watching for the weekend, whether I liked it or not. But I saw most of the match with Man City and Spurs, and it's a cracking game. Did anyone of you see it?
No. Honestly, I saw the last couple of minutes because we were going out to dinner, and our taxi driver, who shall remain nameless because he could get into trouble, decided to put the last few minutes on his phone while we were driving to where we were going for dinner, and didn't realize that he was an avid Spurs fan, and how he stayed on the left-hand side of the road, I do not know.
Well, no. I mean, Harry Kane did the job. Harry Kane played well. They all played well. I mean, Martin, I suppose a team like Spurs have been much maligned, and we're no strangers as well, and rightly so sometimes. But they can. I mean, they're capable, like any other team in the Premiership. They're capable of playing a decent game of soccer if they want to.
They have, I suppose, they have the firepower to punish teams on the counter attack. When you have a guy like Son and you have Kane on your side, and that proved to be the case yesterday. Kane was, I suppose, he really had a point to prove with the move to City falling through over the summer. He didn't play well when that move didn't materialise. He seemed to be a guy that just wasn't, I suppose, happy with what was happening at Tottenham. Maybe the change in manager has helped. He's getting a tune from him now. But it's his first real, I suppose, typical Harry Kane performance this season. And ironically, it's against the team that he was trying to sign for in the summer.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, and of course, Chris, with Liverpool winning as well and City losing, that narrows the gap at the top between Liverpool and City.
I mean, let's be honest about it. Irrespective of who you follow, you want to see a title race go at least to the end of April, if not early May. Let's be fair. I mean, if the title is decided in the mid-February, sure, what else are we going to be watching? I mean, the TV companies certainly want to finish it. I mean, and the thing about it is now Liverpool have the two best strikers back in Mane and Salah. So I mean, they do have their own fire back. So it's going to be a question now about whether it's down to game management between now and the rest of the season, between FA Cup down to European Championship or European Cup down to League, down to whatever. I mean, Liverpool have a cup final this weekend coming, you know. So it's going to be basically. And look, you never know. There's been a little bit of a turn in the weekend. I'm surprised some of the matches actually did go ahead the weekend. But if there's a couple of cancellations, and that's going to make the schedule a little bit more constricted, you know what I mean? So while you do favour Man City, they don't have that much. From what was said was that it's in Liverpool's hands, believe it or not, because if they still have to play Man City and they have that game in hand, which is happening this week, and then the game in hand will be happening again. So look, it's there. I mean, it's there to have a close finish, and it makes no difference who you want to see. When you do want to see a close finish.
And the nice statistic is Spurs beat City at the opening of the season, and they're beating them now again. Very few teams beat City twice in the same season.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing about the league, right? I mean, every dog can have its day, but 38 league matches is consistency. And while Spurs can turn it on one day out of 10, right? It's to turn it on 38 days in a row. That's their problem. They don't have a squad big enough. They don't have a squad good enough.
And of course, we had Salah reaching his 150th goal in, I have written down here, in 236 games. It was an astonishing record. I mean, he's a small man, like physically, he wouldn't be muscly man, like, for a small striker like that, And I don't mean anything against small people. I'm just saying that, you like to have a bit of muscle, but Salah has been, I suppose, quietly he's proven himself to be a world-class player. There's no doubt about that, Even the great, what's his name, Messi couldn't haul PSG to a win. So there you go. It's all one man. But nevertheless, Salah, you would bet Salah could always get a goal for you in the game. No matter how bad the team are playing, you could always say, well, if he has a half a chance, he'd probably score the goal. And of course, Harry Kane said, Shane Long, it's nice to see Shane Long on the score sheet. He's a lot of service to know Southampton. The manager's a good time for him. He didn't start the game, but he come on. Got a nice goal. I don't know anyone see it. Like, he got a really nice goal. But Burnley, of course, won. Chelsea won. Arsenal won. Arsenal quietly, Martin, going up the table, with no fuss about him. A lot of disparaging remarks against Arteta. I mean, Aubameyang, whatever his name is, he scored for Barcelona. But, I mean, I think he got rid of him out of the team, which was a good thing, because he was a disruptive force.
Yeah, well, Arsenal are tipping away, but, I suppose they always get a generous run of fixtures at a point in time, and they seem to take advantage of those. And then they come into a patch of fixtures that are quite difficult, and the wheels kind of fall off at that point. So I wouldn't have too much faith in them yet, because that's how traditionally it's worked with Arsenal over the last couple of seasons. I think the match that I was most intrigued about the weekend was Manchester United and Leeds, because that was like it was like looking back in time, looking at it was something like that. The pitch was like, I thought in the second half it was almost unplayable at points, like where the ball was actually stopping in the water. Tackles were flying in. There was a couple of incidents there, let's say, where, on another occasion, yellows and reds could have been given. They weren't, probably for the betterment of the match, they weren't.
Yeah.
But there was some unsavory stuff as well. There was coins thrown at players. Again, that's kind of a step back in time as well, where you have players getting hit by coins celebrating a goal. It was the first time in 19 years the clubs met in a Premier League match. So I suppose that added fuel to the fire. It's been a long time since Ellen Road had Manchester United come to town. It was good. It was an entertaining game, plenty of goals. But I suppose the headline after it was, I think has been 9 people arrested. So there's something there that needs to be sorted.
Well, I mean, obviously there are certain grounds in all the divisions that it's notorious, and I don't know. I mean, obviously we would never condone that kind of carry-on. There's no need for it. United had a good win 4-2, and the much benign Maguire was on the score sheet. I don't know about Harry Maguire as captain of Man United. To me, it's a reflection of where the club is when they have a mediocre player like that as captain. Chris?
Shouldn't be playing for United. Simple as that. He's not good enough. I mean, but that's the premium English soccer players are getting these days. I mean, 80 million, it's honestly, in my opinion, I'd probably be a bit harsh when I say this, but he's defrauding a living.
He's what?
He's defrauding a living. I mean, to be honest with you, he's not good enough. I mean, it's just the old joke years ago about he's not good enough to lace George Best drinks. That's as simple as that. It's just he's not up to that standard. I mean, he's slow for an international centre half. I mean, he gets away with it with England because England have decent players around them. Now you can say, well, why don't Man United have decent players? But Man United are turning out to be a box of misfits. Let's be honest with you. They're a team of individuals. That's what they are. They're a bunch of individuals, and they're not a team. Yes, and then they have this guy who has, in my opinion, an inability to express himself or to communicate without using the same old kind of trademarks lines that you hear from, on Sky Sports News 3 or 4 times a day. And it's just, I mean, the guy can't even possess a thought unless it's written down for him. And, and with the way it is, I mean, I put it this way. I mean, when you think about Roy Keane and how Roy Keane, when at a young age, when he was captain of United, probably on the same age as Maguire, and I mean, he could express himself quite clearly and quite, adeptly. I mean, this guy, I mean, I don't know. There's just something lacking. I mean, I would seriously give the captaincy to Ronaldo, or even, do you know what? Pogba would be better than Kane, or
Martin,
than what's his
the
name? I
captain.
mean, that's my own opinion.
Is
Yeah,
it the manager who appoints the captain, Martin?
I would assume so, but like if you go back to like United won the Premier League in 1992, and back then they had 2 English centre backs. They had Pallister and Bruce.
Yeah.
Now both players weren't blessed with pace, but they had bravery. They had everything you'd want in a centre back. Like you would probably Bruce with the bravery. Pallister was probably a good reader of the game. You know what I mean? While Maguire, I would suggest he has the bravery, but he just hasn't got the pace and he can't read the game that well.
Yeah.
So they've brought in Varane as a means of, but Varane is always injured. He's always sick. It's not going to happen. Now, Ferguson went away and signed Jaap Stam back in once United, say in 92, started going into Champions League football, he realised that his 2 centre-backs weren't going to cut the mustard to win European football because it was just a different level. So he brought in Stam and they won the Champions League. When Stam went, he decided, okay, who do I need to get? He went for Vidic, he went for Ferdinand, he went for the best of the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
United aren't going that way at all. They seem to be getting like Varane because he was available, not because, like, if you look at his record, even with Madrid, it's riddled with injuries. So like they seem to be picking up players not based on a long-term strategy. It's very much this short-term thinking.
Panic buying, Martin. It's panic buying.
Yeah. And that has to change, because if it doesn't change, they'll continue to be a team that are battling for 4th place.
Well, you have to wonder how long is it before the money runs out. I mean, they can't keep spending this type of money on players who just don't cut the mustard. I mean, people have said, they've spent 1.1 billion since Ferguson has left. Some countries don't even have that as a debt. Let's be honest about it. If it was a case that United are now saying we have to have a fire sale, because they can't buy anybody else in before they clear people out. Who is seriously going to take some of these fellas on the wages that they're on? They can't get rid of them.
They can't get them out on loan even.
No one's going to, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, when Pogba's on about 350 grand a week, Ronaldo at 37 years of age is on about a $250,000. I mean, who is deciding to pay these guys the money that they're on? They're not. This is not the NFL. This is not baseball. But they're paying baseball and NFL salaries. And I mean, and my fear would be, and I just wonder, and this is the thing people need to realize when they're involved in football. Sky, who are basically keeping English Premier League afloat, they are cutting their costs at everything, including their news division, to pay for the soccer. If the that is why they can't believe they are praying for a run that's going to go to the end of May. Because if the league is over in 2 weeks' time, no one's going to watch it anymore. And you could even tell that the signs are that people are not paying their subscriptions. There is definitely an economic depression coming towards the UK, right? And they will, and the genuine person cannot. I even know in my own circle, people who have decent jobs are saying, I'm not paying for Sky anymore. Now, if the people who have the discretionary income are decided not to pay for Sky, then the guys who normally follow the likes of United, Liverpool, blah, 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 don't have the discretionary income that some others would have. They're going to say, well, if they can't afford it, I can't afford it. And once that goes, I mean, I even watched the news this morning on GB News just for the crack, and there was two Sky News presenters that were in Sky 6 months ago, gone, took the redundancy. Why? Because Sky are cutting costs all over the place. They don't even have weather people on Sky anymore. Why? To make sure that the money for soccer is paid.
Well, Martin,
Yeah.
as we're on, of course, our Wes Houlihan scored again for Cambridge. I know I'd be looking on all the Irish players. 39, he'll be 40 this year. As you know, Damien Duff was trying to get him over to Shelbourne because
He'd
the
need him.
League of Ireland started Friday night. I watched most of the St. Pat's Shelbourne, a decent game of soccer, I must admit. But St. Pat's were always going to win the game, I thought. But Shelbourne have a very young team. There's a few nice touches. I know they didn't really see it. You know, I liked it because Talca Park were going to go in with Bohemians to develop Dalebound Park, but they've decided, I think there's big investment coming into Shelbourne, and they're going to ask permission to buy back Talca Park from Dublin City Council and develop themselves, which I think would be great.
Yeah, but it's a huge step up from the first division in League of Ireland to the Premiership division, you know, and unless you have a real, I suppose, investor behind the scenes that's willing to sign players from the better League of Ireland clubs, like, you're going to struggle. So for Shelbourne, I presume it's a year where it's consolidate and try and avoid relegation and hope there's probably 2 teams worse than them, or even one, and get into a playoff and just survive and maybe build on that. It was probably, if you look at it, like they won first division last year, it was probably a blessing in disguise that Treaty United didn't get promoted, because it would be a very difficult time for them if they were. So, you know, they have another year now in the first division. They won their game the weekend. I think it was 5-1 against Wexford, and they're off to a great start, and they can build, hopefully, for a good
You're right, season. They're playing at Clone next, which I think is another 3 points for them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interest around the city in following Treaty, and there's a big appetite for a League of Ireland club in the Premier League in Limerick. But I went to a few Treaty games last season, and there was a good atmosphere there. There was a good crowd there, a very knowledgeable crowd. There was no trouble. There was good fun. You could bring your kids. And I'm sure that'll continue this year. And, you know, even if you go into sports shops now, the Treaty kit is available and you can see kids wearing it. So there's a good thing going with Treaty at the moment. And I suppose it's the first time in a long time where I've seen that level of interest in League of Ireland in Limerick.
I think it's good. They're going to have a compilation program every week now as well on the League of Ireland, which I think is well earned. You know, I like it. I always liked League of Ireland soccer. When I lived in Cork, I followed League of Ireland soccer all the time. It's just fantastic. But you had 2 good teams in the city.
Let's just hope the FAI get behind us, maybe.
It is. I mean, obviously it is indeed. There's no doubt about that. You know, I don't know really. There's a lot wrong with soccer. Their media is the program. Come back to soccer maybe later on. The final whistle on their media. I'm with Martin, Chris, and myself tonight. We give the rest of the guys a night off. You know, we got tired of them really saying the same old thing all the time. You know, they just needed a break. You know. And learn a bit of English. Golf over the weekend, and then we see the golf. The man from Finland, is it Niemann, won the Genesis Invitational. 63, 68, and 71.
He's Chilean.
Is he Chilean?
Joachim Niemann is from Chile.
Is he Chile?
Yep.
I thought he was Finland.
No. Joachim Niemann is from Finland. Is from Chile. You're thinking of Victor Hovland is from Norway.
Yeah, I know Victor Hovland is from Norway.
Yeah. Niemann. Yeah, it's a bit of a German name. I'm not even going to go where that came from, but I mean, let's just say that he's Chilean.
Yeah, I was thinking of the cross-country skier, the 50 kilometers cross-country.
That's what you had. That's a hard one, Pat. You shouldn't be thinking of those things.
Yeah, and he when he was finished anyway, he had to go. There's a certain part of his body was completely frozen solid.
Was that the highlight of your Winter Olympics for the last 2 weeks?
Was that in the Winter Olympics, and it was the second time it happened to him. So he's a lucky man that he was, you know.
There's so many headlines coming through my head right now, but I'll be taken off the air.
Yeah, anyway, the golf. Anyway, an interesting competition was held in Australia, the TPS Murray River event. I must say, I only looked it up for tonight, but Hannah Green won. It was a mixed golf tournament for men and women. Hannah Green won it by 4 shots. You know, it was the first one they put on. Now, obviously, these would be the lower end of the thing, not taking from her victory. She shot a final round of 66. Apparently, it was very impressive. I know I didn't see any of it. I just read about it, and I saw some clips on YouTube today. But it was interesting. I suppose women wouldn't be as strong as men. We know that in golf, and we know that one of the greatest women's golfers in the world, or one of them, she's now plying her trade on the singles tour. That's Annika Sorenstam. She'll be playing for the first time in, I think, 15 years or something in the Open this year, Ladies Open in America, because she qualified for winning her last tournament. Be interesting to see. She's 51 years of age, but she looks tremendous. And as you know, she played an awful. She lives down not far from where Leona Maguire was based, and they played an awful lot of rounds together. Leona was saying that, and she was saying she picked up some fantastic tips from her. I'm sure she did, and they're generous with their time. Unlike some of the men who are following the money. But anyway, the G over the weekend, the National Football League is still in the swing, and Dublin lost again. I don't see any of the guys.
I saw the Kerry match yesterday, and I saw the Tyrone match yesterday, and I think this weekend proved to a lot of people that the GAA have absolutely no intention of looking after player welfare. And when you see what happened, and I mean, there's a few things that came out this weekend. The first of all, that I mean, the Kerry match should not have been played. The Tyrone match was waterlogged, and they delayed it to a bit where and I think the only reason that match was on was because the TV cameras were there. 25,000 went to Croke Park on Saturday night to see them against Mayo when in the downpour. Luckily, the pitch is able to take it. You've got players over the last few days playing Sigerson's Cup and Fitzgibbon Cup and playing. I mean, Oisin McConville has a team with the Dundalk IT. They pulled out of the Trench Cup final because they couldn't field if they allowed their players go play with the counties. And David, what's the guy for Kerry? David Clifford was supposed to be rested yesterday, but came on in the beginning of the second half. And this, I mean, I've said this many times, but I think this idea of having a split season is to ensure that there's not an open revolt by club players if they don't have a definitive start to the season when they're playing. And and I'll tell you the point, and I'll make this point, that Clare have decided last week that their county championship, they've said this, the county hurling championship will start on the 10th of July. I'd like to remind people that the All-Ireland hurling final is on the 17th of July. So if Clare gets that, it ain't happening until August, lads. Simple as that. And then the merry-go-round goes again. And then people are saying about the Flog Bishop. Colin O'Rourke made the point on TV about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he said it straight, and he says what's going to happen with the split season is that the county players are going to get injured when it comes to August because they've been flogged all year long.
And Martin, obviously on the field, Dublin lost again. But I mean, as I said, it's not a crisis. It's 3 games in a row. But I think,
but it could be a crisis, though, Pat, because they could be facing into relegation, and we know from experience and from previous, I suppose. You've only looked close to home with Limerick footballers, for example, who spent years in Division 4. The lower down the league as you go, the less competitive games you're playing. When it comes to championship, you're probably caught a bit cold. If you look at Cork, I think Cork are in Division 2 now.
Cork are in trouble.
Cork are in trouble.
They're in serious trouble because they only got something like 3 points on play against Derry, which is shocking.
And this is not going to bode well for Munster football.
No.
When you have Kerry, who are, I suppose there or thereabouts, they're knocking on the door. They were in All-Ireland semi-final last year, probably got caught in the hot by Tyrone. Then you have Cork struggling in Division 2, potentially going into Division 3.
Yeah.
You've Tipperary, who won a Munster title and now are they still in Division 3?
Yeah.
Just about.
They're bottom of the.
You have Clare, who are probably the most improved, who are going well and have been going well for a number of years under Colin Collins in Division 2, and you've Limerick now in Division 3, and unfortunately lost yesterday to Louth. But again, we talk about player welfare. That game was due to be played in the Gaelic grounds yesterday, and it was decided to switch it out to the University of Limerick on the all-weather pitch. Now, we were supposed to have a challenge game, an underage challenge game yesterday, and we called it off yesterday morning because it was absolutely crazy. But I actually went out at the time when that game was supposed to be on, and it was not the conditions to play any game. The wind was howling, hailstones, the whole ship. It was from a health and safety perspective alone, I'm not sure was it right. Like
Well,
soccer matches were cancelled.
There was Martin. The problem was there was times on yesterday that the weather was actually worse than on Friday, and that was classed as a red warning.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they were thinking, putting kids and putting fellas, young lads, and young. I mean, I'll give you an example of how dysfunctional the GAA at the moment is. This right? You had Slough-Neil in from Derry, okay? They're playing the Camogie semi-final. Now Slough-Neil is near enough close near Coleraine, up the very, very north of the country, and they're playing Sarsfields, who I think are from Athenry, around that area. Right. The match was supposed to be played in Breffni Park in Cavan, which would be about halfway. Pitch was unplayable. They moved the match. Where did they move the match to? Gorey in County Wexford.
Yeah.
I'll go away.
Gorey in County Wexford.
And that's not the first time that's happened.
That is,
ladies.
Honestly, the two teams should have made a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going, ladies.
We ain't going down there. No. And nothing against Gorey. Gorey's a lovely town.
It probably is, but you're talking about playing a match at 2:30, 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in February and driving past through Dublin for both counties, for both clubs, driving through the M50 to Dublin and arriving whatever time you're going to arrive back in the north or back west.
But that's at least a 500 kilometre.
Horrendous decision.
A 500 kilometre long journey out, down and back for.
There was quite a few, actually, despite the weather, there's quite a few games. As you said, Clare had a good draw against Roscommon, 9 points each. And I think they'll consolidate their place in Division 2. I think Cork will be in relegation fight mode at the end of the season. They're playing Galway next Sunday, by the way, Cork, for the Cork people who are suffering. And it won't get any better, I don't think, for them, you know. The team they put out against, because I know a bit about them, the team they put out against Derry, they lost 113 to 7 points. Incidentally, Kerry beat Donegal on the same score, 113 to 7 points. They only, as I say, only got 3 or 4 points in playing the whole match. For the senior players to do it, despite the conditions. I mean, really, if you have the same players doing the same thing week in, week out, and nothing happening, really, goodness to me, if you're looking at a team like that not performing and you're not making any changes, there's something seriously wrong.
But the problem is, Pat, you says right. The problem is that the players may not be there, and this is why that the GAA, and you have to remember the problem Cork are going to have is if they're in this Taunton Cup, which is basically the bottom tier, the bottom 16 teams. You know, you could see an awful lot of players decide all of a sudden that they're going to go on holidays.
Yeah, they won't stay with us. I mean,
they won't stay with us. You know, and that's why they wanted to, and they've appeased the club players because they were afraid that all these club players would just have a mass resignation through their own club GPA union, and you know they're all going to go and play soccer. I mean, there's one lad I know from Shannon across the road from me played for Clare 2008 All Ireland Munster final for Clare. Gary O'Connell, I know his parents very well. Hadn't played in 12, 13 years. GAA, won't play even for his club. He plays soccer for Newmarket Celtic because he knows the calendar at the beginning of the season. He knows when he can go on holiday. He knows when he can take a weekend off. He knows that. Soccer, the GAA could not give him that.
No, and a good story in my book, keeping the exile flag flying for Gaelic games, is London. They had a good win again yesterday against Leitrim. They have a good shot, as you said, Martin, in the Division 4. If you're down there, it's very hard to come up out of it. But a team like London, you know, to be great to see them coming up out of Division 4 or anything, but I think they're doing well.
We also had a female referee in that game as well, Pat. So it's important to acknowledge that
true.
You know, and we probably need more integration across the actual the elements of the GAA between the ladies GAA, the Camogie Association, and the GAA. And I was just reading today that the GPA, I think the annual Congress is taking place this weekend, and the GPA have put through a motion where they would like to see those three entities, those three boards, to integrate more, because this fixture farce has to stop. Like I've no idea how many stories I've heard now, and that one from Chris is just the icing on the cake, like. Or the cherry on top, where like games are rescheduled, lastminute.com, and you know it's just showing a lack of respect to
Of
the
course it
people
is.
that are
I
training
mean-
hard, putting a huge effort, the volunteers behind the scenes as well, the coaches, the trainers, all these guys, and to throw that like a 500-kilometer round trip.
Martin, there was a match on the ladies were starting their National League last weekend, and they got one of the Dublin girls to do the press conference to launch it on the Tuesday of last week. And she turned around and they says, "Well, you're looking forward to your match?" She says, "We're looking forward to match, but we've no idea where we're playing it." And it's very difficult to promote a competition when we don't know where the match is going to be played. And this is 5 days beforehand. They had no idea because they cannot get the venues. Nobody wants to give them the venues. That's what it's down to.
Talking about the ladies, a new addition to the Cork Camogie backroom staff got sent off over the weekend.
Careful.
Davy Fitz got sent off. Were you reading that?
I did.
Oh, anyway.
Sounded like a right menage a trois if I heard of it. That they're all the Cork. They're all from the same club. I mean, Davy's son is involved in Clare.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interlinked.
I don't know, but anyway, back next weekend, and we'll have the hurling back next weekend.
Yeah.
And interesting. I think Cork are coming down to the Gaelic grounds, Martin.
Yeah, and like just it should be good. It's a 2:45, 4:45 throw-in. But like, I suppose we need to mention the Fitzgibbon Cup final and Cian Lynch getting sent off. And the Cian Lynch sending off, like, I'm not sure what planet the linesman and the referee are on.
I think they didn't see the whole incident. I think what they saw was the hurley flying through the air. And I'm only guessing, they must assume that he threw, but just Cian Lynch, your man tripped over Cian Lynch and put the hurley flying himself.
Yeah.
So I think that they might have assumed that Cian Lynch threw the hurley at him.
Can't make decisions on assumptions.
I saw red cards, lads, in my life. No matter who it is.
It turned the game totally. It was there were 4 points up and it happened and they lost by 1.
I mean, UL did the same against Carlow.
Oh, they did. They pulled it out of the bag with a last minute free.
Bang. So I mean, they have character and they have
great character, yeah.
That guy number 6 for UL was absolutely outstanding. Omar, is it?
Yeah, centre back. Yeah, it was
outstanding for the whole game. I think he was really fantastic, and the weather was whatever. Anyway, I acknowledge to UL there. The crash bang wallop was on over the weekend as well. All 4 provinces won in rugby. Ulster, Leinster, Connacht and Munster won. Our friend Zebo getting 3 tries. Anyone see that? As I said, I was glued to sport the whole weekend for where I was. 1 channel, 2 channels anyway. Munster won 34-20 against Edinburgh. Anyone of you see the rugby?
So a bit on Friday night, yeah. There's clamour for him to play for Ireland. I think that ship, Zebo, to come back for Ireland. I think that ship has sailed.
Well, as much as I admire Zebo, I think he's a fantastic player. He's not fit enough for international.
No, he's not. He's not. He actually looks a bit chunky.
No, he's not fit enough. I mean, look, anyone. I don't know. I'm not an expert in fitness, but certainly he wouldn't be fit enough for. He might be fit enough to play against Italy because they're no good. But apart from that, he don't think he'd be any good. Like, and they give you away tickets against Italy. I wonder.
Well, it's never. I mean, to be honest with you, they're €75 a pop, so they're not giving them away. Let's be honest with you. I mean, the young lad was kind of thinking, "Come on, Dad, let's go." I mean, for the 3 of us to go, it's $225 before you step out of the door.
They wouldn't pay a $5 to see Italy playing Ireland.
Well, look, this is another thing about what we were discussing the other day. Okay, I mean, there's a few matches that I want to go to, right? I mean, I wanted to go and see about going to the possibility of going to see Leinster versus Munster in April. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff in Dublin, so it doesn't necessitate a stay overnight. But you know what? If you wanted to stay overnight the way things are going, I mean, the tickets are actually cheapest. The tickets are €25 each, right? But it's €100 for fuel up and down. And bet if you want to stay overnight in a hotel, it's €225, right? And then having a couple of meals, having a couple of drinks, you're talking about for one night, £500. That's to be honest, I have to equate that £500. That's my car for 14 days on holiday in July.
Look, there's 22 homeless charities in Dublin. They'll get you a bed for tonight, for God's sake, after the match. Wear a torn jumper going up. Look, I don't want to be disparaging, obviously. I don't mean that at all. You know? But
isn't it a good opportunity, like the Italy game? Wouldn't it have been a good opportunity to bring it down to Thomond Park or something?
Absolutely. The French brought them down a couple of years ago to Marseille and whatever, to Lille.
Oh, they did, yeah.
You know?
They did actually, right, yeah. But I mean, obviously with the United Rugby Championship, all the provinces, and well done to all of them. I mean, obviously Connacht's result stands out away to Scarlets, 23-29. So, that was a good result for them. Obviously, La Rochelle, Mr. Ronan O'Gara, they did the trick over in the top 14. They beat Clermont Auvergne, which is a heavyweight clash, 31-27. I saw highlights. I don't speak French. I don't understand French, but I still recognize when they're shouting for the try, whatever. But anyway, I saw bits of it on the channel. And I think Ronan O'Gara, I mean, he's outside of Ireland. So, if you're away abroad, you're forgotten about somewhat, not because he's from Cork or anything, but Ronan O'Gara's regard and his stock as a coach is huge, not alone in France. I was reading about it, but in New Zealand as well. One of the main clubs in New Zealand were trying to get him last season, but he said, look, I've signed as a 2 or 3 year deal, and I'm going to see that out. That's the kind of person I am. I'm going to see my contract out. But next weekend, we've Scotland playing France in Murrayfield in the Six Nations, lads. How do we read that one going?
Tough game for France. Tough game for France.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the weather is what's forecast is, another type of storm like conditions coming in.
Well, it just plays.
Yeah,
France will way too good for Scotland, in my opinion. Way too good.
I think it depends on the conditions, Pat, because if the conditions are anything like last weekend, I'm not sure will the French, will it level the playing field, so to speak.
Yeah.
They traditionally don't play well on their travels anyway. But I know they have a different side this year, and there's a lot of talk about them. But they have to prove themselves on the road as well. We know what they can do in Paris.
That's true.
And like Murrayfield, what will Scotland do? They'll have snow on that ball coming down, and we'll see what the French like. We'll just see how good they really are.
How do you see France and Scotland, Chris?
I'd give Scotland a great chance because, as Martin said, I mean, it's Ireland had their chances against France, right? England could easily beat France a couple of weeks' time. I'm telling you this now, that I would not be surprised if Scotland win that match, because France, while they're building for something in a couple of years' time, this is the kind of banana skin that has always cost them Grand Slams.
And then the other one is England and Wales. Much like England and Ireland, these games take on a life of their own anyway, regardless of who's the
Where's
best.
that match on? Where's that match on?
Wales is in Twickenham.
I fancy England for that one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And then there's no point in talking about Ireland and Italy, with all due respect to rugby followers. I mean, it's only a question of how much they're going to win by.
Yeah.
Fair. 25 points plus.
It could be 15-0 or 14-0. I don't know what it will be.
Well, look, I mean, I think what I understand your point. I do think that I would rather persevere with Italy than sell out and have South Africa. Yeah. South Africa have a championship. It's up to them to make it. They've got issues with their club rugby. They've discarded at least 4 teams that were there with the Super 18s or Super 19s, whatever they called them. And now they've hawked their 4 clubs up here, which is not working. The United Rugby Championship is not working, Pat. And to bring these guys up here, it will just cause absolute chaos with the French league clubs, with the English league clubs, and with everything else. It's going to add another week or 2 to the championship, and it's going to bring a completely unsavory thing that it's basically it will just, in my opinion, it will just lead rugby down a dangerous road, saying, well, let's just not worry about development, let's just get the money in short term. I
was looking back at the Six Nations, the stats on it, since Italy came in. Really, goodness me, lads.
Yeah.
Honest to God, why are they in the Six Nations?
Because they're a European team.
when they entered the first day, they had hoped that it would help Italy as a rugby union country. We know they only have a handful of clubs to raise up the standard a little bit, but really it hasn't done that. It hasn't happened. It won't happen. They're not a rugby country. They're not a traditional rugby country. If South Africa enters the Six Nations, South Africa, to me, that would instantaneously raise the standard of all the other teams eventually. I think it would.
It's not about raising the standard of the competition. It's what you're doing is basically, and I'll try and keep this as clean as I can, but it's going to be a bit difficult. It's bastardizing the competition and prostituting yourself, because what you're saying is that, what's to stop in a couple of years' time, Pat, that the GAA say, do you know what? See those Cork footballers? Let's put them into intermediate status. Why? They're not playing well. Let's get rid of them. And then the largest county in Ireland doesn't have a football at senior status. That's exactly something that you'd be thinking of. The problem about Italy is this, right? Now, they have thrown money at it. Let's be fair. They have had brilliant coaches there. Kieran Crowley is the current coach. He's a Kiwi international. They had Conor O'Shea. They had Michael Bradley. They had John Kerwin. They've had all these guys as coaching, but you can't make, what's the old saying? You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. That's what's happening. You cannot expect them to make an international squad of 30 players out of 2 domestic league teams. It doesn't happen. It's like basically you saying it's basically saying that the Cork senior hurling team for next year is going to be run from St Finbarrs and Newtown Shandrum, and that's it. You're not allowed any other player from any other club. You won't work. It seriously won't work.
Be a good idea sometimes, but Martin,
but you know what I mean?
The idea of Italy, I mean, I'm not against Italy at all. They're a soccer country, and that's the end of it. They're not a rugby playing nation. They have proven now after 20 years or something in the Six Nations or whatever it is, they're not a rugby country. They're not a rugby playing nation. There's no development of the game in the country over all these years. So what is the point of being in the Six Nations?
Yeah, but like, what's the solution? Kick them out and or bring in Georgia. Like Georgia,
no.
Would you say Georgia rugby nation? Like what do you do? Like
go back to the Five Nations and put Italy into a decent second tier competition where they have promotion and relegation.
But then you're still going to have a Six Nations, Pat.
Yeah.
No, Five Nations.
No, you said promotion relegation.
Yeah, Five Nations. The bottom team goes down, and the winner of
the bottom team out. Hang on, the bottom team out of the 5.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, no. Oh, there'll be war out of that. Oh no. God no. Absolutely. So you're saying? Are you telling me out of that? So hang on a second. Let me just get this 100% right. So of all those 5 nations, quite possibly, either England or France or Ireland or any other 2 could go down and not play for 1 year.
So what?
Oh dear, Pat, you will just kill off rugby.
Well, if you had
maybe that's what you're after.
If you had a second team, if you had a second 5 nation, we say 5 more countries.
There isn't other 5 nations.
Italy, Georgia, Russia. I don't know where. Japan.
Hang on a second. Do me a favor, Pat. If you're going to come up with 5 other countries for a second tier, at least try and name them. You can't just juggling after 3, and out of those 3, you're naming 2 who are not even professional.
I have them: Italy, Georgia, Russia, Japan, and Spain.
Japan's not European, and Spain are non-existent.
They need to be playing international.
No,
rugby.
See, we had this discussion last week, Pat, and obviously, I don't know whether you will actually listen doing your editing. I'll say it again for the purpose of clarity, right? Italy are a European team. Japan are an Asian team, very close to Australia, very close to New Zealand. If they want to develop, to be honest with you, if I was a Japanese rugby official, I wouldn't be going anywhere but playing New Zealand and Australia. I would love to be able to play New Zealand and Australia 2 or 3 times a year and developing my team. Again, what are you looking for these countries to get air miles or something, Pat?
No,
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what you're saying.
Look, the Six Nations happens between November and February. They could base themselves.
The Six Nations doesn't happen between November and December. The Six Nations happens between February and March.
Sorry, and they could base themselves in Europe, for God's sake.
But why should they?
To improve the game and improve the standards.
They don't have to. So you're saying base themselves in Europe? But where do they play their home matches?
Well, they could be rotated. They could be Ireland, England. This is not rocket science.
So you're saying that Japan could play in the Six Nations, but they have to have all those matches away from home, and their supporters will not be able to see Japan play in the Six Nations.
Look, they'll watch them on television to be grand.
Oh, come on. No. So you're saying to me that it's the farce of the century having Ireland paying €75 for Ireland playing Italy, yet you're going to have another farce in Ireland or England playing Japan 4 or 5 times a year, and Japan not having the right to have a home match. I mean, for God's sake, Pat, you're going to start thinking, at least Japan, a bit of research into your argument.
I only picked out Japan because they're certainly, they're certainly far superior to Italy.
Hang on a second. You've been hitting the drum with Japan for the last 2 or 3 months here now, and I'm a bit perplexed that you haven't done your homework on this, in that you are seriously in this discussion with Martin as not a referee, but as someone who can actually listen to what we're saying, and you're seriously considering that the Japan play in the Six Nations and do not play a home match.
Well, I mean, obviously,
cannon fodder, absolute cannon fodder.
I think there's plenty of room. They could base themselves in Germany, for instance.
They don't want to, but in Germany. So what? Hang on a sec. And where would they play the home matches? In Frankfurt?
No, they could play them anywhere.
But they want to play them somewhere, and that's in Yokohama Stadium just outside Tokyo, Pat.
I think, Chris, hang on a second. I think we're getting bogged down in
You're getting no. Hang on a second. Hang on, please.
Please, is no of a competition.
Please, hang on a second. I'm not getting bogged down in semantics. To be honest with you, if we're going to have a serious sports discussion, a serious sports show, at least come up with plausible. But you come out with the most outrageous, outlandish decisions, right? In allowing a team 15,000 kilometers from home, play in a competition, and then you have the audacity to turn around and not give them home matches.
Well, I think that these are things that can be worked out, but the principle remains the same. The Six Nations as it is now is just a joke.
You make it hard for me to actually stay serious in this program every week, Pat.
Just a joke, Martin. Do you think? What is the point of Ireland playing Italy next weekend? Tell me.
Look, Italy are not playing well at the moment. We can go back a few years and
they haven't played well for 20 years.
Well, but they had points where they did play well. They beat us, I recall. They beat Wales, I recall. They beat France, I recall. So they've had big wins at home. They haven't had big wins.
Scotland a few times.
Yeah, so they have had scenarios where they've actually played quite well. They're just not going through one of those spells at the moment.
I think is it 5 or 7 years since they won a game in the Six Nations?
Yeah. But Pat, there isn't really a whole lot of alternatives out there, and the argument about Japan, in fairness, Japan should be, if they are to go anywhere, they're going to be playing against the likes of Argentina, New Zealand, South 100%. Africa, and Australia. And then that would really bring on the Japanese game, in my opinion.
Just go back to the Five Nations, because the way it is now, it's a joke.
I think the games are very competitive, apart from the Italy games.
The Five Nations, I'll give you that. About the most kind of that's one thing you've actually said that I would agree with you tonight. That you've actually said go back to the Five Nations. Five Nations I could live with, okay? Yeah. But again, you know what? Sometimes the European countries don't help themselves by not giving the likes of the Italians the fair crack at the whip. There's times. It wasn't that long ago when they were talking about Scotland being relegated from the Five Nations because Italy beat them 2 or 3 years in a run. And Wales can 1 year win the Grand Slam, the following year get the wooden spoon. That's happened.
Yeah, it has, yeah.
That has happened. And Ireland have won and then flopped big time. Where did England come last time? 4th. So, these things happen, right? I understand your point about Italy. I totally get it. I'm 100% with you that. But your solutions are just off. Your solutions are for the birds.
But Chris, all the other Five Nations don't go 5 and 7 years without winning one game in the Six Nations.
There was one time Ireland were. I remember watching Ireland.
They don't have a record as bad as we were.
I remember watching Ireland in the 90s, right, where people were giving away their tickets for free.
Well, we're not looking for any tickets for the Ireland-Italy match anyway, lads. We'll probably stay at home and watch it on telly. The final whistle is the programme on learnmedia.tv. And for all your comments, email us info@learnmedia.tv. Boxing over the weekend. Kell Brook retired Amir Khan. Did anyone really see the fight?
Young lad sort, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
see it.
As I said, I was with my dad, so he bought the fight, and we watched it. It was shocking. I thought
Just kind of a payday maybe for both guys.
yeah.
You know, Khan, his final fight probably. Brook, you know, although he wins, where does he go from here? Like, I don't see him getting a title shot again. Like, his last couple of fights, like I think he's lost 3, hasn't he? Or he's won 40 last 3, something like that. But the fights that he'd lost, he had a horrendous eye injury, and I'd be, you know, you'd have to be worried for a guy that may go one fight too many. You know, his options now are limited. Like, is it fight? I think the rumors are a fight against maybe Chris Eubank Jr. or maybe Conor Benn. Again, it's a shot. It's a fight for nothing. Really. It's another payday.
They're both 35. The only fight Kell Brook would have meaningful fight would be Chris Eubank, and if Chris Eubank Jr. is interested in promoting himself, getting his name out there, Kell Brook would help in that way. But Kell Brook wouldn't lace his boots. Really.
No. I mean, that look, this is all the hallmarks of when it was like the British Championship World Fighting of the 90s, and Steve Collins usurped all that. They were just fighting among themselves. And I think one of the things that Sky do have to take responsibility for is that program that they show between the two fighters and Johnny Nelson, maybe about 5-6 days before, which is turning boxing into a hateful sport. And I've actually stopped watching that show because they showed excerpts the other day, and it was just two men who was just doing, obviously, I know they're trying to drum up ticket sales and drum up people buying the packages in Sky, like Pat and his dad, but that's exactly what they want, and it's becoming spiteful, it's becoming hateful, and it's becoming reminiscent of the days when Michael Watson was injured in those fights in the 90s, because they just went that step too far, and it's going that way again. And I mean, there's been 2 fights in 2 weeks that have been spiteful fights, and that's not the way it should be. And someone is going to get seriously hurt because someone is raising the tension level too high.
Well, the whole bill, I saw some of it Saturday, and I saw some more fights Sunday. I just had to do something else, but my dad saw the whole bill was very poor, shockingly poor. For the tickets, for the price, there's 20,000 in the stadium.
Yep.
And for the tickets are ranging from 500 to 1,750 or something like that. I don't know. But I'm just saying that even the Can Brook fight was shockingly bad. I mean, Can in the first round, we're on board with death. He always had fast hands, but he wasn't hurting Brook, and Brook knew that. And Brook only landed 2 or 3 punches in the first round, and they all hurt Can. And I said to my dad, "This is all over. Can isn't going to do anything here because he's no power." And he went out of pep after 3 rounds, and it was all over. And the referee did the right thing and called a halt. There was a guy from Waterford boxing on the bill, middleweight, and I think it was a minute and a bit. He was all hyped up. He had so many things, and the other fella was a local boxer. He destroyed him.
Yeah, these guys are going to get themselves hurt. They're going to get themselves hurt.
Natasha Jonas, who is 37 years of age now, she's fought 3 times for the world title, but they picked out this girl from Venezuela, I think. Now she's a decent fighter in her own, I suppose, in her own company, at a certain level. Now Natasha Jonas went up a weight to fight her, but Natasha Jonas looked superb in the fight, very strong and very well together. She knocked her out cold.
Yeah.
He was nearly a foot taller than her. But the first decent punch that Jonas landed, it was all over.
Yeah.
It was shockingly bad again. I was thinking to myself, sitting in the front row there in that promotion, I'd be looking for my money back.
Yeah,
it was shocking. But as you said, Chris, there's something the matter with boxing when you have the approach by Sky is shocking.
It's
I
it's
mean,
going to get people. It's going to get people killed. That's my own opinion.
Sky has destroyed soccer, destroyed
Yep.
the game of soccer completely. And I blame Sky completely for VAR. Now, I'm not blaming them personally or the company or the organization, but because of the way they show something from 27 different angles and views and vilifying refs and linesmen down through the years, it was as a result of that, I think, VAR came in. Just shocking decision.
Well, I
So
think what's happening with boxing, especially, Pat, is this, right? Is that, as I said, the last couple of weekends have shone a light on it, that this promotion of vengeance, of hatefulness, of basically what do they call it? It's like they have like a vendetta that and it's like one guy wants to seriously hurt the other, and and that program that they have. I mean, they should, under no circumstances, have two boxers on a TV studio within a month before a fight. Because all it is doing is ramping up the tension. It came to the weigh-in, and the two of them were at it before at the weigh-in. They had to be separated. Now everyone's going to say, "Oh, well, that's this, that's that." But you know what? Apparently, there was an argument at the fight. There was a big row at the fight with Phil Foden's family. He was attacked at the fight, or his family was attacked at the fight afterwards. It's just something is just, there's an undercurrent to it, and it's simmering. The tension is simmering, and I just think you're going to get two guys, and it could easily be like, say, like Tyson Fury or someone like that, who's going to go in and they're going to have a right set to, and then when it comes to the fight, I mean, the fight that happened the previous week was it Liam Williams? I mean, Liam Williams lost that fight because he was out of control. He let his anger and his personal animosity get the better of what boxers should be, which is basically being under control. He was the complete opposite of what a boxer should be, and that's going to get fellas like him seriously hurt.
Well, I was looking at the fight, Martin and Chris. You'd remember Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, and
Marvin Hagler.
Marvin Hagler. I was thinking those three guys, and those two guys, Saturday night, together would have been beaten by Marvin Hagler with one hand behind his back.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's how bad they are, you know, at a world level. But anyway, boxing, a lot of people aren't interested in it. As I said, I was interested all my life, but I think there's something nasty. All right, Chris. There was an incident in Kell Brook's dressing room before the walkout with his gloves. There should have been no incident with his gloves if his team was around him. And then what happened? Because they were late for television time, they walked him out into the ring. I never in my whole life, following boxing and attending many matches, amateur and professional, down through the years, they changed his gloves in the ring.
Apparently, he was told by Khan's men that if he didn't change the gloves, he would not get paid. So who's calling the shots?
I never in my life saw anything like it.
He shouldn't have changed his gloves. He shouldn't have changed his gloves. He said he shouldn't have changed his gloves.
The final whistle is the program. Before we finish, we're looking forward to the 5.5 Nations next weekend.
Just before we go, Pat, I think it would be remiss if we didn't mention what happened at the Winter Olympics this weekend. And I know we were hoping to get a guy on from the Court of Arbitration Sport. Yeah. I just want to say this, okay, that I actually sat down. I was lucky enough, I had a little bit of time. I think it was on Thursday to see the figure skating with this 15-year-old girl. And I have to say, it was probably the most depressing half an hour of sport I've ever seen in my life. I just felt, do you know what? I actually felt sorry for the girl. And I mean that sincerely, because this is a girl who was under so much pressure. She's a 15-year-old girl. And I just feel that the decision to allow her to compete and to finish the competition spectacularly backfired to the point where she just crumbled. She basically crumbled in front of your eyes on Thursday afternoon. And there was two things that came out of it, which was stark for me. The first thing was that when she struggled, that it was probably the longest 4 minutes of anybody's life watching
Well,
it.
4 times.
The second thing that I thought, which was the reaction from her coach to her coming off and says, "Why did you not fight? Can you please explain?" Or she didn't say, "Please, can you explain that to me?" And I think the third thing which actually happened afterwards was when they showed a picture of what they probably class as the green room afterwards, and the eventual winner and the girl who came second. I have never seen in my life an Olympic champion look so joyless and depressed when they were declared the winner. And I thought, oh my God, this is just this is not what sport is supposed to be.
No.
And I hope, and I do feel that when they said, when CAS made their decision, they said that if we don't allow her to compete, this will do irreparable damage to her. I think allowing her to compete would probably do more, because there is the distinct possibility that you may not see her ever compete again, because apparently, and I've done a bit of reading, this coach spits them out, churns them out, and if you're not performing at that level, winning medals at such a young age, they'll just get rid of you. And all the champions that she's had over the last 4 years are either injured or retired. And it could be a case that we have to seriously look at all sports and have a minimum age requirement.
Martin, we spoke about doping before.
Yeah.
And the fact that Russia themselves were allowed to compete is, I don't care about the individual athletes. I don't care. They can go somewhere else if they want to apply their trade. But Russia, I mean, it was in the front to all so-called clean athletes when they were allowed to compete in the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, and now in the Winter Olympics. In China, of all places. Can you just imagine it? I couldn't anyway. Did you see any of the figure skating?
I didn't know. I didn't actually watch any of the Winter Olympics.
We watched myself and Mary. We watched
the
little girl, and I knew by her demeanor.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it after the win, because I knew when she came out. Just so sad, No?
But I think the thing that they're going to have to. I mean, the thing about this allowing Russia to compete under the Russian Olympic Committee, the reason they're doing it is they're saying that, well, we can't tar all the clean athletes with the same brush. However, they wouldn't allow the medal ceremony to take place for the team event until the decision has been made. So that is basically hurting all those good athletes and all those clean athletes that competed, that should be allowed to get their medal, and they're not. So you're kind of wondering, because the American team went to Thomas Bach, the IOC president, and says, can we get our medals before we go back to the States? And he says, no, we can't, we're not allowed. So who's running the Olympics? Is it CAS that running the Olympics, or is it the IOC that are running the Olympics?
We don't know, but before we finish, lads, I know if you're on with us next Monday night, there was an expose done by, and of course it's no surprise again, by Paul Kimmage. I'm not a big fan of Paul Kimmage's writing. I'm not a big fan of Paul Kimmage as a journalist. I must admit, out here in the open, he's done some very good work. He's done action jobs as well. But I was reading his piece yesterday in the Irish Sunday Independent on doping and horse racing, and to make the hair stand up in the back of your head. So I had it down, but we'll cover that next Monday night if we do a bit of read up on it. I don't know.
Just one thing on it, Pat. Does it pay to be a whistleblower in Irish society? Because anytime we listen or hear a story about a whistleblower, they become the person that's ostracized. So Jim Bulger, case in point.
Yeah.
He's the one. Now, there's been other whistleblowers, but Jim Bulger, I suppose, is the most high profile, or one of the most highest profile trainers in Ireland and the UK. And he's come out and he did the interview in the Irish Field in 2020, and he followed up with Paul Kimmage in the Irish Independent, or Sunday Independent.
Yeah.
And he raised concerns about the levels of, I suppose, maybe the IHRB weren't doing enough, is what his concerns were, and they need to do more, because obviously there's, people are talking and people are telling, basically saying I've seen X at trainer X's yard, and horses are being moved around the place.
Yep.
You know, raids are happening and tip-offs have occurred. So we could go on and on about it, but it was an excellent piece yesterday, and it's just I suppose it's a continuation of a previous piece. And you know, I suppose looking from the outside at it, it seems to me that some of the smaller fish are being penalized and being caught and being punished, but yet, you know,
the easy touch.
easy touch. Yeah.
Low-hanging fruit.
The athlete from Ireland or Benin will be destroyed, but the athlete from Russia, America, big countries, or China, there'll be nothing to them. Anyway, look, we'll do something on horse racing, and you're right to remind me of Jim Bolger. I'll be contacting him now after the show to see can we get any few minutes with him. You know, it'd be nice to talk to him, all right, you know. And people like that. I know about Paul Kimmage because he's tied up with the Independent. There might be problems there bring on other programs. I don't know, is he freelance or is he a staffer with the Independent? I'm not too sure of that, you know. If he's freelance, he'll be grand, but if he's a staffer, he won't be grand, you know. Anyway, from this edition of the Final Whistle, from Martin Waters and from Chris Price and myself, guys, thanks very much for your time, and we'll see you all again next week. So from this edition of the Final Whistle, till we meet again, take care and good luck.
Take it easy, guys. Bye.